you're so right about that. And it goes back to the very beginning of like, well, how'd you learn how to walk? You know, not well at first. You know, how'd you learn how to drive? I know. Well, that's kind of the attitude I've taken recently, where I thought, okay, I'm not going to do this from a standpoint of fear. I'm going to do it from a standpoint of joy.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
Hello, hello, hello. Today's chat is an absolute treat. Andrea's super cool, absolutely hilarious, thoughtful, kind, and a deep thinker. I can't remember the last time I laughed this hard. She has an incredible story which showcases her deep resilience, forward-thinking ability, and evaluate on the go capacity. I love this lady. It was a lot of fun. She simply doesn't fail to deliver an awesome chat. Anyway, let's get into it and officially introduce Andrea to the podcast. Andrea Anders is an actor who is probably best known for reoccurring in Apple Hits comedy series TED LASSO, where she appears as Jason Sudeikis' wife. She can also be seen in the Netflix revival series That 90s Show and Freeform's drama series Cruel Summer. Andrea will next appear as a series regular in How to Be a Bookie for HBO MAX. On the film front, Andrea currently appears in Spirited, opposite Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds on Apple TV+. She also worked on the critically acclaimed The Good Fight, opposite Christine Baranski. Her previous memorable work includes the hit series Modern Family, About a Boy, Mr. Sunshine, Joey, Young Sheldon, Mr. Mum, and Better Off Ted. So as you can imagine, we dive deep and we cover a lot, such as doing stand-up comedy, ease and flow, pivoting, birthday roast, resilience, vision boards, stealing ideas, auditioning, ego, and good partners. Before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I find it adds a new element and dynamic to these chats. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny and Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes, or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode. We briefly spoke about it off air, but I'd love to know about your relationship with vision boards.
My relationship with vision boards. I am that person. I live in LA and I'm an actress and everything that you think.
Everything.
True. I believe in psychics. I talk to psychics. I like to do cleanses. I do all the things. Everything that's cliche about an actress in LA is me. And I would really like to say that I do vision boards, but the truth is I'm just more like that person who's too actually lazy to do a vision board. But actually, I have to tell you, now that we're talking about it, I may just have to do it.
That's how it works. When someone brings up something, when you feel you need to do it, that's like a sign that you have to do it.
Yeah, because there are certainly some things that I would like to manifest.
Any things that you would like to share?
What would I like to manifest? Let's see here. No, I don't think I can tell you.
Because that's how it works with manifestation. Sometimes if it's too early in the game, if you reveal it, it can impact it. I don't know if you're in that line of thinking as well.
Well, I don't know a lot about Jesus, but I do know.
What do I
I don't know a lot about that either. I know about vision boards and psychics. That's but I have been told that one of his, that's accredited to him anyway, whether he actually said it or not, I don't know, but I believe somebody said, go forth and tell no one. And And I think that's the idea. That's the sentiment behind it, is if you speak too soon, you know,
I agree.
you'll ruin the magic.
It's a very interesting concept just with ideas in a sense as well. Whenever I've had an idea for like a screenplay or something creative or even a business venture, if I've shared it too early, I feel like it's been sabotaged in a sense because it's kind of like a baby. I want it to grow and nurture before I bring it out to the world. If I, for example, with the screenplay, if it's very early and I haven't even written that many pages and I'm telling too many people about it because it's so fresh and I'm not really sure what it is, it can be massively influenced, normally in the wrong direction. So now I only really share ideas once it's fairly progressed. I don't know if
Yeah.
that resonates with you either.
That does resonate with me. And my brother works in the business and he works in a sort of a different area of the business. And I took a shot at his area of the business and I went out pitching an idea for a show. And
Oh.
I had this slam dunk that I was like, oh, this is gonna be easy. And they were like, no, thanks. And I said to my brother, I go, do you think that they would take that idea and then make it without me? And my brother went, yes. He's like, you just get here? I was like, that's not very nice.
Okay, so this is, I've briefly spoken about this on the podcast. I had a screenwriting inverted commas opportunity. I won't call it an opportunity, but it essentially was potentially someone nabbing my IP. And it would have been exactly that. I'm okay, I've done the work, it's fine, it's a good lesson.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting how that can happen because there are also rules. So when you mean you had
Right.
this idea, was it not developed enough where they couldn't do anything? Like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, I would think I was at the stage where I didn't quite understand exactly how to go about it in that way, where I was covering myself legally. I've come to understand that the idea of arbitration in writing is
Crazy.
it's just part of it. Like,
Oh.
nobody sees that as like a problem, or everyone just kind of expects it,
Oh,
that.
okay, that's scary to me. I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I didn't know that either. That some of the writers that I know who have, they'll tell you, they'll say, "Oh yeah, the 7 of those I had to go into arbitration on," and I know, I felt the same way. I
That's
know,
terrifying because I've got about 7 screenplays and you said 7, that's scary. We're not going to put that out there, but
but also that could be an American thing. Doesn't that sound awfully American? That
it
something like
does. But my
much.
all of my screenplays are for the American market, I believe. So,
All right, well,
well,
you better lawyer up.
I did get one on the other one, and it's a lovely experience, as I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah.
So, did you what happened with that idea? Was it kind of like cut there, or did you progress with it?
No, I didn't. I let that one go. I moved on from that one. Yeah, I've been out pitching a few different times, and I do actually interestingly like the pitching process. Um, for some reason, it's a little well, I guess maybe I'm just more accustomed to the audition process. You know, which is one could argue one is easier. I don't know about that because I feel like the preparation I've done for being good at auditioning and auditioning regularly is a lot. Prepping for pitches was a lot, Um, but for some reason, auditioning a lot and getting told no doesn't hurt me as badly.
Ooh, okay. I want to pigeonhole that because that's amazing. In terms of,
Yeah.
I'm just curious kind of on the writing side as well, because to me, pitching a show, unless you're the showrunner, it really doesn't have much to do, in my extremely limited knowledge, if you just want to write episodes and you have to pitch it and that's kind of it seems like a non-natural skill set. Like I'm not, but a lot of writers are introverts and they just want to
Oh,
kind of, here's the show I'm going to write and you guys can take charge. But going up and pitching it and selling the idea is so different to the actual writing process.
right. That's true. And I was pitching with my brother who is a writer, and I did feel that way in the room, that because I am an actor, I was way more comfortable speaking and performing and pitching than I thought I would be. Once you get to that point, we're in the room and you know what the story is and you can answer questions. There's also been times where I've gotten into rooms and there's questions and I'm not as prepared as I should have been, and that's really terrible. But even then, I feel like I can do the thing where I can at least sort of dance.
I think you'd be very good at that. And then this is the topic that interests me almost the most, is a lot of actors hate auditions, and
Yeah.
and it seems like you don't.
Okay, well, I'll tell you something interesting about that. Well, interesting is a strong word. I don't know. We'll let the listeners decide how interesting this was. Talk about overpitching. When everything changed, when the world changed, and everything went into self-tapes, I had an extremely positive response to that.
Ooh.
Which, from what I'm told, is not the common response. Most of the people that I have spoken to are not happy with the self-tape.
Yeah.
I now can say that, yes, I do really quite enjoy auditioning. Prior to that, it was a love-hate relationship, because the lead up to the room was so scary to me, because you just never know. The thing is, you can be so prepared, you can be so good at the job, you can be so good at the role, you could do all these things, you feel good, got a good sleep, didn't drink last night, do all the things you're supposed to do. And you just don't know. There's an X factor that when you get in there, something can happen. And it has, to me, enough times that it's just so nerve-wracking to not know how good or bad it's going to go. But at home, I don't have that. And also, I think a thing that makes it really great for me is that my life partner is really good at his job in the self-tape. And I didn't know that until worldwide pandemic shut the world down. And so I'm extremely lucky that the person who I live with is so good at his end of the deal that I love it.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear, because I've heard so many stories as well where, there's someone recording and it's their partner and the partner's not in the industry, for example, and they're like, and just like mumbles and stuffs up the whole process. But it's so good that you've got someone where you adapt it very well.
By the way, he does do that. And he even did that when I was in a producer session on Zoom and dropped his line. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? I'm like looking at him going, come on, we already missed the joke, but can we just finish the scene, whatever. And even with that, I still call him the very best.
That's amazing. I've heard so many horror stories of when missing the beat, missing the thing, but at least you could recover from that, because especially the joke's the crucial element normally if it's a comedy.
Yeah, and you can always just go like, my readers for shit,
And to make you look better in contrast as well.
Yeah.
That's the key. Get someone who's so bad so that you look so good in comparison.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Okay, I'm glad that you found that. I'm glad that you could adapt. And in terms of dealing with the nerves, I guess when you're at home, you're in control. You can do the tape. I don't know if you're allowed to edit the tapes. Are you allowed to edit the tapes?
That's a good question. I never do. I mean, I try to get it in one. That's a little tricky, and that's a little bit of a bummer. It would be nice if you could. No, I don't. I just try to get it in one. But again, what he's very, very good at is knowing when I've hit it and knowing when I haven't, and knowing how to hit it if I haven't. So you're like, wait, what did you just say?
Oh, that's cool.
It's like a children's song. Yeah, so he's been, and it's funny because most of the time I know what I'm doing and I do it, but a couple of times he's gone, and it's sweet because he sort of doesn't want to hurt my feelings, but I'm open to criticism with acting. Personally, keep it to yourself. But to get a gig, I'll take it. And so he'll say things like, and one in particular, he was saying, you're so angry at this line that there's not enough happening. It's like, come, give yourself somewhere to go, which is kind of a note that is like something you can hear a lot. And it's always like, I know. But I was like, okay, fine. And I tried it and I couldn't break out of it. I had memorized it and I was like, and he was like, no, you're still doing it bad. And so, and it was funny because when I finally was able to take the note, we got it. It was such a marked difference. I say words like marked. It was such an improvement that it was really kind of that one that I was like, oh, always listen to him. He really does do a great job.
Well, it's obviously you and he's allowing you to thrive, but since this arrangement of where he's roped into doing your work, have you noticed a higher percentage of booking gigs or better responses?
Yes, we have
Oh, wow.
we have a really good track record.
Give me his number and,
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm very, very lucky that way, and I much prefer the self tape.
okay. That's awesome because a lot of people didn't necessarily, everyone's different, didn't like it because they weren't in the room, couldn't feel the environment, but you were,
Yeah, and I will say too that I've done numerous like producer sessions on Zoom. Those don't go great for me.
so
That
what a producer
that
session?
track record is zero. Where you do well enough in the self tape and now they want to meet you on Zoom and have you do the scene. I got a goose egg on that. So if I can just get the gig off the tape, I'm golden. But if I have to do this, so far I've lost all of them.
See, I spoke about this on another podcast. To me, that is so tough. One-on-one is fine, but if there are other people in the room, there's a lot going on, and even there's lags and all of that stuff. It's pretty hard to determine if someone's right for a role during a Zoom session because there's just too many factors, even more outside of the control of already. Like there's just so many factors, as you know, and maybe you'll share some. But doing it via Zoom just feels like there's even more luck than usual potentially.
Well, and also too, whether it's Zoom or not Zoom, if I send a tape or if I was in the room and you taped me and everybody gets together and they have a conversation about it, I always feel like if we're gonna do it again, it's room for changing your mind. Like you want to think, oh, they're going to love me, but you don't know. And I have had that happen too, where it's not even Zoom. I go into the room and I'm like, remember that great thing I did? And then it's just not as good as it was. And I can tell and they can tell. And I'm going, damn. And other times I've been in a position, and your position always changes in this business. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. And sometimes when I've been up, I've been in a position to say, no, I'm not coming in for a second one. Take the tape or,
Oh,
yeah. And then other times I'm not in that position and I've gone in and then lost it because I sucked that day.
so what's the relationship between that of knowing? Is it just a mood thing? Like, how do you know when you're going to say no or yes or dance around that game?
It depends on what your like last job was. Like if you have a job that makes you fancy and important, then you can say like, no, take it off my tape. And if you haven't worked in 10 years, you're like, okay, I'll come in.
See, this is so interesting to me. You've got such a vast, long list, huge resume, and we'll get into some other stuff. And it's weird. Okay, I'll bring it back. Like as an accountant, you build up the ladder. So if I start at a graduate level and I can get all the way to a partner. But with acting, as you know better than anyone, you can have that amazing role and then you might not get inverted commas that amazing role in terms of how many eyeballs are seeing that show. And so it kind of like fluctuates. So they might look at your last project, but they might not look necessarily at the other ones that you've done before. And it's such a weird concept. It's not a ladder. It's not linear at all. I'd love to know how you feel about that.
Well, I love that question because I have noticed in my travels that it has happened to me on both sides. So, for example, I have been a series regular on a show that's and an actor will come in and get a guest spot on the show. And then not too long from then, it will be reversed and I'll be a guest on their, right? And so I'll do this. Well, in the past, before I realized all this was going to happen, I just let my ego run away. And I was like, I guess I'm a huge star now. And it's like, you know? So, where you'll have, it's that age old thing, like be very nice to the people on the way up because you're going to meet them on the way back down. Well, that goes on in this business and people that you know, that you'll meet people that you're sort of on a level playing ground with, where in terms of where your career is and where their career is, and then they shoot into the stratosphere. And you're just like, in fact, this is a good story. Jesse Tyler Ferguson and I had done a show together, and then both of us had done other shows. And so I went over to his place where I had given him like a piece of furniture because he needed something and I didn't want this piece of furniture. So I gave him this piece of furniture. It was like, that's time in life, right? Where you're like, take your friend's furniture.
Write a piece
And
of paper. Don't forget.
and his, like, yeah, he had the DVD, remember those, of the pilot of Modern Family. And he put the DVD in and we sat together and we watched the pilot of Modern Family. And I just, as soon as it was over, I just slowly went, and he goes, I know. And I was like, oh, you're gone. Like, this is it. You're going straight into into orbit.
Wow.
I know. It was so, I have the chills talking about it. It was crazy. I was like, wow, see you later.
Can you imagine this was like after season 5? He's just showing you the pilot and it wasn't fresh. And he's just like, what, look at, just to like remind you of his success, just casually dropping it to everyone. No, but he sounds like a nice guy. That's crazy. So you could tell from the pilot that this is going to be.
Yeah. And it was undeniable. I mean, it was like the Friends pilot. I mean, it was like, that's a hit. That's a huge, huge hit. And I'll see you later. It was crazy.
Wow. I'm glad that you got to be on your couch to watch the pilot with him.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was a guest star on his show.
Oh, interesting.
So maybe the roles will reverse someday. Won't that be something?
Didn't you do a show with him that, I don't know if it went ahead. You've got a long list. We're jumping.
Yeah. Yeah, we did one season together. Called The Class. It was great show.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Clark, David Crane wrote it. It was amazing. They're amazing writers. They're the best writers I've ever. They're incredible.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So it's so interesting. If you said like meeting the ups and, sorry, you might meet someone like you were working with him and then he got Modern Family and he flew up. We've also had experience on this podcast and where you get this amazing life-changing role, well, inverted commas, life-changing role, and it might be life-changing for a year, a few months, years, and then just the nature of the industry, for whatever reason, they go back and do inverted commas guest roles, which are awesome, but they're not necessarily the regular star of 100 episodes on the show. I've also found that really interesting, and you mentioned the ego side, because often in life when we think we get this one big thing, it's a stepping stone to the next big thing. And I do think of it like that, but not necessarily in terms of hits on TV shows. But it's not necessarily that building block from one show to the other. So I'm wondering how you've been able to cope with that, because you've had a lot of that in your career as well.
Yeah, I have a lot of up and a lot of down.
I mean, in that sense, I mean like a huge like
Oh yeah, right. I've had shows where you're like, whoa, that's true. You're right. I mean, even like way back when I was first out of school and I was living in New York, and I got 6 out of 8 episodes of this series finale of Oz.
Oh wow.
I don't know if you know that show, but it was a huge show at the time. And I was in 6 episodes of the last season, and it just didn't seem like the kind of thing I would, like, what role am I going to get on that show? And that was maybe like, well, I guess I'm going straight to the top. And it was like, you're just right in the middle still. But it's funny. I don't, this isn't really speaking to that, but it just reminds me of this, that when this kind of thing first happens to you in this business, it draws me to the parking place, which is when you drive up to Warner Brothers and you flash your badge and you drive up to the stage and you park and you walk right inside the door and you do, like you said, like 100 episodes, which, by the way, I've never done 100 episodes, but that would be amazing. But you do some episodes. And then within a very short amount of time, you're not on that show got canceled and you're back to square one. And now you go audition on the lot. And they're like, you can park down the road, like, and you can walk, and then bring your ID and you bring a blood sample, and you're like, oh, I would, you security guard, you're like, and so I remember, yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember the first time feeling that way and being like, oh, I have to figure it. But then you get older and wiser, and you, like you said, you check your ego and you remind yourself that you're just really lucky to be here, and nobody owes you anything. I had a manager who said that to me one time. I was in New York City, and I was auditioning, I think at NBC or something like that, and I was in a building that was important and fancy, and I had been in that building before as a series regular, as like in a press event. And then there I was waiting to be called, and then nervous, and then going in and trying to get the job. And then I left and called him and I said, God, I was just remembering when I was there on that show and I was doing press, and here I am in the office trying to get a job. And that was what he said to me. He goes, nobody owes you anything.
Wow.
And I was like, no, you're totally right. Nobody owes me anything. And if you don't want to play this game, that's your choice, but you're playing it. So suck it up.
You said that, or he said that?
I said that after he said nobody owes you anything. I said to myself, I said, well, you know what? It's your decision to play the game and you're playing it. So deal with it.
That's still very mature. And, the ego can spiral in so many different ways, especially when you've had fame and success and, all the natural feelings we can have, entitlement, or who do they think they are? And we can kind of run away or not want to keep on going forward. And this has been a theme which we'll get into of your life, of just, if there's been a roadblock, you push through it. I find that really interesting, of why not only do you want to move forward, but also to tackle the ego, because the ego can tell us all the stories in the world. And you got it on the spot of when he said that, and you're like, you know what, you're right, let's go forward.
Yeah, yeah. And I think those times where you don't get the parking place and you got to go back and beg for a job or at a place that you had a big fancy job, as much as those times hurt, and they do, I hate to say crap like this, but that's what builds you. I mean, that's what makes you say, well, what do you want to do? Because numerous times throughout this journey, I look at friends of mine who didn't take a risk like this and did very well for themselves. They have very good lives. And I think, God, I could have done that. I really, really could have done that. I could have been really great at something and gotten paid well, or consistently at least, over, a period of time. I just didn't.
Yeah.
Consistently. And I just didn't do that. And I move in and out of like, that was a good idea, that was a bad idea. And the partner I was discussing earlier it's one of our favorite topics of conversation, of that concept of deciding,
No, I thank you for bringing it up. I think it's so interesting because I had this lady on this podcast, and she's written the book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she's amazing. The book's amazing, where essentially, just as a blurb, she was a palliative care nurse, and she interviewed thousands or hundreds of people, and she asked them what their top regrets were. And the number one, there were many different regrets actually, but a lot of people lived the life they thought they were supposed to live, and not the life that they wanted to live. And they had a huge amount of regret. And reading that, because I used to be an accountant and now doing this, I know that I could have earned a lot of money as an accountant. Life would have been good. I would have been happy, but I would have never reached that level of fulfillment or happiness while pursuing this. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I know that if I had my time again, I went back to the accounting, I don't think I would have reached that higher level of purpose or happiness. Doesn't mean I would be like that all the time, obviously, but I don't think I would have reached a higher level of what I think I can achieve or feel in this world. So I'm wondering, when you have those conversations, or is there something that is also intrigues you?
Yeah, it's funny. My dad was a mail. He's still alive. He just is not a mailman anymore. My dad was a mailman, and my mom was a dental hygienist. So they had these good jobs, you know, and we had a perfectly fine life. And my mom was very great about you should do everything and anything as fast and as hard as you can.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and so I really feel like I had that message going in of like, I don't know, just go for it. Because I think she felt like maybe she didn't and really, really wanted me to. And in fact, just before I had made the decision to move to New York City to give this a go, something really intense happened. A boyfriend of mine was in a car accident and he was unwell, and I said to my mom, I said, I guess I can't go. And my mom said, go, and when he's better, he'll come. But if you don't go now, you may not ever go. And so it was really interesting because, and that was all because of her. And then she did this other really great thing where I had an aunt who said to my mom when I was graduating high school and I was going to go to college for acting, she said to my mom, what is Andrea going to do with a degree in acting? And my mom, with her little Midwestern accent, said, act.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh,
So I mean, I think that's a big, big part of it because I think parents that you're probably younger than me, but parents of, I can understand the message of like, why don't you be an accountant?
yeah.
Why don't you do that? Because, why not? I didn't have that. I had the opposite of that. And so I feel very, very lucky that I had that. And also, I do also question it sometimes and go, God, why didn't you just be an accountant? You're great with numbers.
I really love the questioning because it forces us, not we're not always going to be on the high and see things through the positive lens, but questioning is really important because it keeps ourselves accountable. Otherwise, we could sweep things under the rug and just have like panic attacks all the time. But questioning, I always question myself as well, probably too much sometimes. But either with how I behaved in certain situations, questioning leads us eventually to the right answer. And if you don't do that at times, then, or through my experience, then that can lead to catastrophic results. Is there something that you would have liked to do, or what keeps you on the path of acting and stuff that you're doing?
Oh, that's such a good question. I feel like, okay, talk about questioning things. This is something I really question a lot, which is that um, I feel like I knew that I was. I'm hesitating on saying good at acting. I just gotta be careful because people are like, I've
Yeah.
seen you, you're not that great. But I knew that like it was something I could do. It was something
You're
that,
good. Say you're good. We're getting putting it out there.
well, I knew that I could do it like at a really, really early age. And I knew that I could do it in a way that was different than kids that were my age at the time. And you have to understand, my elementary school, there were like 10 kids in the first grade, and then there were 10 kids in the second grade, and the second grade faced that way, and the first grade faced this way, and the teacher went back and forth and taught both. I mean, I was like in the 40s. I went to school in the 40s. Like it was like so, and way, way, way out in the middle of the country in snow. So when I say that in second grade, I realized that I was better at acting than 10 other second graders in the middle of nowhere. You know what I mean? But I knew that it was easy I knew I was comfortable. I was comfortable on the stage. I was comfortable learning the lines. I was comfortable with it. So when I get to be the age that I am now, and I contemplate, well, what else do you want to do? Because acting's not really like that. Acting's like you do it here and you do it there and you hope for the best, but it's not like I can sit around and practice my saxophone acting. It's like, what else would you want to do? And that is something that I have struggled a lot with. And I tried my hand at stand up and I wrote 3 different sets that were each 7 minutes. And I found that to be really hard. and
Oh,
fun and good, and I enjoyed it, and I was proud of what I put out and all that. But I really felt to commit to it, I didn't have it. I didn't have the commitment ability in me for that, you know? Um, but I guess it's that that skill set of like writing and creating and delivering that sort of plagues me a little bit, where I go, I know you have to try to do that. I know I have to try to do that. And yet it doesn't feel the same way as when I was in second grade and I got the role of the rabbit in the school play, and I was like, wow, the audience went wild. I must be good. Nothing's ever felt so easy
interesting.
as acting. I know. And so it's something I struggle with. So my brother, who's a writer, really, I hope it's okay to say, gets in my ass um, about that, you know, and in a very great way. He's really pushed me to give it a try, and I'm doing it to the best of my ability, but I struggle. I struggle because I'm constantly questioning the easiness, you know, compared to, because what I come up against is I go, my brother, who the same brother, is an incredible artist. He can draw, paint. He's amazing. I'm the opposite of that. My daughter is like, Mommy, that's very good. I'm like, I feel like the way you're saying that tells me it's not. I know my limitations. So, you know, so I think about that. I think, but he can do that. He can create that way. And I just don't have that. So then how does that fit into writing, creating, producing bodies of work, whatever they are? If it's a book, if it's a screenplay, if it's a TV show, if it's a stand-up set, that's a challenge for me at this point in my life, where I go, I think that unless I do something creative like that, I don't necessarily find myself worthy.
Oh, interesting. I want to challenge you on a few things. One, you're evolving, and it's important, different phases in our life and maturity, we look for different things. So it actually sounds like it's a positive that we feel like it might not be as easy because it could force us in a different direction. Doesn't mean giving up acting. It just means you might want to pursue this as well. Because what most people don't realize is, unless if you're like Brad Pitt, most of the time you're not actually acting, or depending on the schedule and the gig. And also on the stand-up thing, I saw, and I'm not just saying this, I wouldn't bring it up otherwise. I saw one of the stand-up that you released on YouTube. That was hilarious and that was polished. I've watched a lot of stand-up, and that looked like you've been doing it for a while. And especially, you said 7 minutes was a 10-minute clip, but maybe there was stuff here and there. 10 minutes is very hard. 5 minutes, I can understand how people can get to 5 minutes. But that's why they say, do you want like a quick set is 5 minutes? Because you can get like the jokes in the 5 minutes. 10 minutes is completely different ballgame, and then building on that. So you're actually very good at stand-up. So
Thank you.
potentially some.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. I just recently landed 2 or 3 jokes that I didn't mean to. I didn't think they were as funny as I got the response. And it was so funny because it happened recently, over the course of 2 or 3 days. I said something and got a big laugh, and I thought, oh, you know, maybe I should try that, to jot things down. Whereas before, I think when I went to learn how to do it, it felt very hard. And, you know, and I thought, oh, because, you know, I just worked with Sebastian Maniscalco. Do you know who he is?
Is he the Italian stand-up comedian? Yeah, he's
Yes.
huge.
Oh my
Huge.
God, he's so huge and he's so funny. And I just worked with him this year, and it was really funny because I asked him in a very Midwestern naive way. I was like, do you write your jokes down and then, you know, say them and see how they go? And he was like, well, I mean, you know, I've been doing this for 25 years. He's like, I kind of have a different method. And I was just laughing because I was like, oh, right, to me, that's what it means. It means write them down, say them into the mic at the open mic, don't get a laugh, cross it off. Okay, next. You know, it's like, I'm sure it's not that way for him anymore. But anyway, I just thought of that the other day. I thought, well, maybe I should just start jotting these things down, that you're getting these responses from. But the other thing about stand-up, though, is that stand-up is a late man's game. And I don't know who I would be doing stand-up for at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, because I am in bed by 8. So
That, it's just regardless if it's stand up or not, it's an interesting concept of, you bring up that acting was easy for you, and now we're transitioning into different phases of our life, and that's great. So it's not a bad thing. But you mentioned the word worthy, and
yeah,
I've always had this thing where, like, I also wanted to do stand up, but I also want to be in bed well before. And I actually don't want to pursue stand up. So, but I'll say it anyway. It's that because you've achieved so much success as an actor, and the proof's in the pudding, that often when we want to try something new, we're not actually meant to be good at it. You were very, due to your talent or whatever, very good at acting, but when we like play guitar, we suck. And it's a thing in
right.
society where we see, this is just my rant, nothing to do with you. When we see someone, we only see people being good. No one posts them sucking a guitar unless they have zero self-awareness, or people play basketball and they miss. And it's this thing that we've got in this world where we think that if we try something, we have to be good, and it can really deter us. It's deterred me from so many things, and I'm only slowly starting to realize. So I just thought I would put that out there in terms of
You're
the
so
word.
right, because you're so right about that. And it goes back to the very beginning of like, well, how'd you learn how to walk?
Yeah.
Not well at first. you know, how'd you learn how to drive? I know. Well, that's kind of the attitude I've taken recently, where I thought, okay, I'm not going to do this from a standpoint of fear. I'm going to do it from a standpoint of joy. And what happened as a result of that decision is that I met this person that I'm working with right now, who, whether or not this project goes anywhere or gets sold, it's such a joy to know her. And I think about it all the time. And when I feel bad about not doing it well, that's what I think of. I think, but do you love her? Do you enjoy her? And do you trust her? And all of it. Like, and does she excite you? And she sparks creativity in me, and she inspires me, and all these things that I look at her and I think about her and I think, lucky me. Lucky me. How much more do you need to win? That you know?
Isn't that awesome that, we'll put it out there to the universe, we'll put it on the vision board that it's going to happen. But also that experience is so profound in that one, it's bringing you, first of all, joy is the highest power of everything, but it's also teaching you so many things along the way, whether it's collaboration, love, just also improving your skills. That is already like a job in itself in terms of learning and acquiring skills. Well, that's how I see it.
Yeah. I mean, an Emmy would probably make it better, but but
Uh,
but sure, joy. All right.
and it's an interesting concept. Like when I've done at a very lower level, because, well, you can even say with my screenplays now, obviously I want to sell them and I want them to be big TV shows. But what I had to learn, because very long story short, I wrote my first screenplay and I pitched it to a lady with probably the biggest Netflix connections in Australia, which so nice of her to take. She took it out of probably a favor or a pity. I don't even know why. I never written anything in the world, and it was garbage. There was something there that obviously she was never interested in buying it at that stage, but she took a meeting with me, which I was shocked. First thing I've ever written, and I wasn't a creative person at school or any of that stuff. And she said she's not going to buy it, but there's something there. You need to continue to work at it. And although I was really annoyed many years ago that I didn't get the show, because I thought you just write something, doesn't matter if it's good, and you just sell it, I realized that I really enjoyed the process of doing it. I enjoyed working with people. I'd get friends. I had someone write with me at that stage. And that's what's allowed me to keep on writing from the endless of not being able to sell it. Not that I've really put it out there since, but that's been the joy. If I don't enjoy it, which there's so many times I don't enjoy writing or the whole process, if I don't enjoy it more than I enjoy it, I need to enjoy it more. Sorry, I worded that badly. Then there's no point for me. But that's been a slow, very painful lesson, is that I have to enjoy it in the process, because I'm also new to it, or at least was new to it then. And that's been something I've really had to take I have to be accountable for as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that I know that's the thing is somebody told me, so I'm sure I'm gonna not articulate this the right way, but somebody told me that David Mamet says something to people when he gets hired in the world of like, I just want everybody to be prepared to be really disappointed in my first draft, you know,
Oh, that's good.
because I know something like that. I'll probably get, I'm sure Mamet's gonna, it's like, I never said that. My first drafts are amazing. But, that's the thing about what writing that is, I'm understanding more and more is that it's not about that because nobody has a killer first draft. That's just not how it works. You find it as you go. And so you're right. I appreciate the reminder actually to remember to, you know, enjoy it. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You could be a really great writer and you could still have a sucky draft, or even a draft that they didn't want, that doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad. It's just not what they want. It's like, that's just the deal. It's the same as auditioning and acting. And that's for some reason, I don't know why I was able to understand that at a really early part of my journey with acting was it never felt when people say like, well, it must be so hard, all the rejection. I never felt rejected. I never felt that way. It wasn't like I went in there and I did a really good job and you rejected me. It was like I went in there and I did it and you were like, yeah, somebody else probably do it better. That's not rejection. That's just a decision.
Wow.
And it's true. Like you watch people, and then deeper into it, I was in a position where I was watching auditions, and it's totally true. I know really, really good actors that I think are amazing. I would see their audition and be like, it's okay, because not every role is right for you, and you're not, and so but that's not that you're bad or that you didn't get picked. You just weren't just wasn't a fit.
Okay. First of all, we're going to add that to the TED Talk. That's the plug of the podcast because that is
There's
brilliant.
my dream. I want to do a TED Talk.
I think
There
you
we go.
should. It's wild to have that because there's so many thoughts that have popped in because we can take it so personally, and every single person on the podcast, it's been a lesson to acquire that knowledge because we can take it so personally. And, you've mentioned being on the other side. We've had examples of people just doing a brilliant job, but they're maybe too tall or too small, their eye color or this and that. And I'm interested to know, do you just see that? Okay, you mentioned that it's just a decision. It's not a rejection. So if you don't get a role, are you very quickly able to be like, what, on to the next one? What's kind of the process?
Yeah, I mean, there have been times that I felt hurt, but never for very long. Most of the time, I'll tell you, when I get an audition that I really, really like, where I'm like, oh, I love the job. I love the project. I love the role. I love me in it. I love the way I'm doing it. That's hard. That makes me feel funny, where I'm like, oh, God. And then if I do the audition and I really like the audition, I'm like, okay, that's all you can do. Like it's not like I'm going to do better than that. Like there is nothing better than, like, I don't have anything better than that. That's it. This is all I got. So now we just give it over and hope for the best. When you get those jobs, it's amazing. And then when you don't get those jobs, it's a bummer for probably a night. There was one job in particular that I was very, very far down the line and it looked like a go and I was really excited about it. And when I didn't get it, I actually cried, which it was so rare that I would cry over something like that my current partner said to me, why are you crying? Like, what is it about it that feels sad to you? And I had to admit, and I'm going to do this on your podcast, because I didn't really know the answer until he asked me. And then I answered the question, and this was the answer. Just going to do it. It was the money.
Yes. No, you act like that's a bad thing. Like that's we need.
I mean, at that particular moment in time, the money meant a lot to me. And I had kind of, done that thing where I was like, don't start counting the money yet. But I already did. I was like, oh, I'll be able to do this and I'll be able to pay off that. And, it was like a sense of relief, and then it was like, oh, sorry, never mind, you didn't get it. But I didn't really know, that was the truth, but that was the truth. And it was really cool because his response was, well, then, let's move on. And I did, I did, but that happened to me.
First, we've got nothing to be ashamed about. A lot of actors on the podcast have spoken about the three things they look for, whether it's creative fulfillment, good people, like will it be seen, or money. And we need money. Money's not a dirty word. You don't need to be. But also within that, having that conversation with your partner and also you got to explore what you would do with money. So it would have sparked something in your head of what you'll do with money, which would have helped you later on, but also to kind of see what was actually important for you after that conversation. So that's really important through my perspective.
Yeah. It was an interesting little moment in time because most of the time, I'm trying to think if that's true. I was going to say most of the time I don't think about that, but I don't know if that's a true statement or not. But
that's super important. You only act every now and then. Money is so important. Money is just in general important. It's not a dirty word. That's also something that I want to put out there. But anyway, go on.
Well, and also when you start out, or when I started out, I should say, and you are waiting tables and that was not the thing. Like I was never thinking like, oh, I'll get the job and then I can quit waiting tables. In fact, I got a big job one time and I got a lead role in a Broadway production and I was a cocktail waitress across the street from the theater and I kept the job. I kept my cocktail waitressing job while I was doing the show. Because I was just starting out and thinking, well, I don't know if these things closes. I don't want to lose this job because it's a good job. And so I used to finish the matinee on Sundays and change into my cocktail dress and run across the street and serve drinks to people who had just seen the show and would say, did you just play Elaine? And
Oh, wow.
And I was like, yes, can I get you a Cosmo?
That's so great. There's two examples that spring to mind. There was a lady we had on this podcast. I'm drawing a blank whether it was her or someone that won. I don't know if it was a Tony Award. I forgot the awards are called. And on Broadway, the big star of the show, and she would also be a cocktail waitress as well, while doing that as well. And another example that springs to mind, Wendy McClendon Covey, who's the star of the Goldbergs. She's okay. Everyone says
I love her.
She must be the most highly spoken about person on this podcast. Also, I bring her up too much, so I'm very sorry. But anyway, everyone really loves her. While she was, I don't know if it was Reno 911 or Bridesmaids, or she was doing some show. She was sort of like a bookkeeper accountant. I can't remember exactly, so please forgive me. And she just liked that job while she was doing the acting, and it took kind of like the pressure from her, and she had a job, and then they kind of scheduled around her while she was doing all of these big shows. And it's, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. She actually enjoyed it as well.
I love that, and I love her. I was in a casting office years and years ago. The two of us were sitting there about to go in to audition for the same role. And I just was like, I just got to say, I think you're great. And she was like, I think you're great. And I was like, I am. Oh my God. So every time I see her, I was like, she knows who I am.
She's one of the good ones. I forgot how we got on this topic, but it was around, so what made you eventually leave the waitressing job?
Why did I do that? I think it was because I got a pilot and it shot in Los Angeles, and I flew to Los Angeles to shoot the pilot, and I realized that LA was a much better place to be a struggling artist because I could get a car and I could go to the grocery store and I could buy all the groceries that I wanted all at once. I didn't have to decide to just get a jug of this and a bag of this to walk it back to my walk up in New York. I was like, oh, I could drive around and it's always nice here. The weather's nice. And so I moved after I shot that pilot. I was like, ooh, LA is nice. Now I'm like the opposite. Now I'm like, okay, I'm done with LA.
Oh, so where are you now? Aren't you in LA?
I'm in LA now. Yeah. It's funny. My partner said the other day, he goes, I feel like I clawed my way into this town and now I'm trying to claw my way out. And I think I feel the same way. He and I are both Midwesterners, and we didn't want to stay in the Midwest. And now the Midwestern appeal is back to both of us, where wide open spaces and fresh air and, you know, farms and things like that are more appealing than all this traffic and
Oh, that's exciting. So do you think you're going to do that?
well, I think we're going to put it on the vision board.
Amazing. I want to pigeonhole this because there's just a lot of points that you said. And, as I said at the start of the podcast, your story has been, and whether you pivot in whatever direction you want, that's still absolutely awesome. Well, it's just awesome in general, in that, you moved from a small country town, as you're alluding to. You had many different like kind of stops along the way, whether it was New York or LA, and there's been different moments in your career where you've been, I don't know if the right word is like challenged, but you've still kept on moving forward. And just to give a summary, and please interject, moving to, I think you first went to New York and would have been very weird for you. I think in another interview you described yourself as being a fish out of the water, completely different world, and you're still trying to pursue this acting game. Well, you just started, and I don't know if it was then where your mum encourages you as well to stay there, or it was LA. You then moved to LA because New York you didn't feel like was right for you. LA, I think it took, what was it, like 8 months, and then you found something, which is really quick, by the way. And
Yeah.
along the way, and then the last point, I know I'm saying a lot because it's very exciting to me. Then I think at one age you said that you were H out of the network game, which is crazy to me that that's even a concept. And there's been all of these little moments, not little, but all of these moments along the way where you kind of been challenged and you've still been able to say, you know what, I still want to do this. You've been able to move forward. And there's probably 1,000 other things as well. So I'm just wondering, we're talking about decisions and pivoting. Obviously, we talked about ease and stuff like that. There must be something within you where you're like, you know what, this is something I got to do, or this is the right path for me, or at least at that stage. What was kind of like that thing within you that allowed you to keep on pushing forward?
Gosh, I'm giving him so much credit, but he really deserves it as this amazing person that I share my life with. I could almost cry. He almost, but I don't want to ruin my makeup. I shoved it down. Um, um, he and I met each other later. I met him on my 40th birthday, and we started to share the path together, and I felt like maybe I might have tapped out on this career, and I wasn't sure if it was gonna. And he was really instrumental in I would do this thing where I was like, I'm gonna start an organization business. And you just go, no, you're not. Look, you're not. And he really just kept reminding me of all of it, like why you started in the first place, what it takes to keep going, what happens when you keep going, why keep going, don't quit. You're not done. I promise you. He really,
I like him.
I know, he's really an incredible, amazing person that I have to give so much credit for too, because he really was standing there going, this is going to be great. Just trust me. And then here we are, like self-tape, self-tape gamblers.
And, and then along the way, because he came on later, so it's nice that he can remind you and be a huge support system for you. Is there like this characteristic? Was there this drive? What was going on, especially in the earlier stage? Because, being just a fish out of water can be overwhelming and you can say no. And then moving from, that's the small country town to New York first, that can be scary. You can give up. Then moving again to LA, which can also be scary, and it's a different world to New York. And then the other stuff we said we'll get into, but that can just be overwhelming and scary. That can be enough for anyone to say, not too much, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, that's true. And and I was scared and nervous a lot. And I don't know why I don't know why I pushed through that because really, my brother says this too about the two of us that like we came from such a small town and we came from a place where this wasn't really the internet wasn't the thing. Like it wasn't like we were watching other people do it. We both sort of did this thing that was out of character for where we were and where we're from. And he always says moving to New York and moving to LA was like moving to the moon. I mean, from where we came from. Like it was like a completely different universe. And I don't know why I did it, but I will say this. Well, probably it was because of my mom. And also now that I have a 6-year-old daughter and I find myself being very adamant about adventure with her. And it's like I hate I know it's a little bit morbid, but I always say to her, say like if anything ever happens to me, she goes, "You want me to have an exciting life?" I'm like, "That's right." Like you just enjoy your life. I would just annoy you anyway, so don't cry about it. Like just move on. But I just, I worry about the generation of this especially in Los Angeles. It's very hard to teach children autonomy because, I'm sure you probably experienced it too. I went outside and played for the day and came back. Nobody knew where I was. Nobody had a cell phone. Nobody, it's just there's a different time now and it's a different place. And I look at her and I think, how do I teach you that you're safe? How do I teach you that you can keep yourself safe? There are ways to keep yourself safe and travel and experience and go for it. And, it's like, that's such an important part for me for her is that she is an adventurous spirit and yes, when you adventure crazy things can happen and yes, our world is scary and all of that, and yet I just look back on my journey and I think, boy, I don't know why had so much bravery to do that, because you're right, even hearing you say it makes me remember like, God, you're right. Sometimes I meet people who are actors and they're, oh yeah, I grew up here in New York City or I grew up here in Los Angeles. It's a different thing. That's a different thing than what I'm not saying like I'm so much better, but it's just a different thing. It's a different skill set to pull yourself out of farmland and go to New York City.
A lot of
Yeah.
resilience. Your daughter would be very proud. It kind of reminds me of what my mum and dad as well, where they would just allow me to travel and do things. And you can't really, that's the best, like for a parent to give the child a space to just be them and just kind of like grow because that's how someone's going to rapidly learn. I really like that. So you got my approval even though you didn't need it.
And your parents did that for you? They encouraged that in
Yeah,
you?
they would. I remember. I don't know why this springs to mind. My parents have taken me on many different trips along the way because when they immigrated to Australia, they from South Africa, they weren't very wealthy. They were struggling a bit, and now that they've built up along the way. But one thing that's I'll get onto that in a sec, but one thing that springs to mind, I remember was that I was going out all the time during my uni years. And my mum's not a party goer by any means. It was like a Monday at 8 o'clock. And she's like, Michael, why aren't you out? She wasn't encouraging me to go like clubbing or anything. She's like, it's go out, it's Monday, go and do something. And I thought that was hilarious, especially because my mum, I've never seen her drink alcohol in her life. But they've always, now that I look back on it, thanks to this conversation, they've always been like, go out and do your thing. And like I'm accountable for my life, and they've taken me to amazing places in the world, and then they've shown me absolute poverty, like whether it's in South Africa or we've been to the Northern Territory to show. Like one trip we went to Africa where we got to see the beauty of the land, and then the other half of it was seeing absolute poverty. And it's very occasionally I think about this. I should think about it more, but I think it was the poorest place in the world, or at least in Africa. And to see the kids, they had nothing and they were so happy. They had like a flat soccer ball and they were all kicking it and they were way happier than anyone else there. And I'm very grateful for those experiences because I wouldn't have had that I wouldn't have gone there. But just things like that can really remind us that we can get out of our own way and people live differently. But, happiness is pretty important.
Oh, you have good parents.
I'm very happy. I won't tell them that, but I can just tell other people besides them. It's so in terms of the resilience and the perseverance. I'm also intrigued to hear about, you have one of the most amount of doing pilots that have never gone ahead. That's not a reflection on you. I know you're going to laugh, but that's if anything, that's a massive positive because not a lot of pilots don't go ahead, that you've been able to book so many different pilots. I'd love to know your relationship with that because I don't know how many there is. I've written down a few. I just can't find them at the moment, but people would have never have heard them anyway. Oh yeah, there was like Lady Friends, How We Live, Divorce, a Love Story, Cuz Bros, The Half of It, Crunch Time.
It's
There's
a lot.
and then there's more. That's just all that I could find. And you were series lead, I think, for all of them or most of them. And that's also could be a life-changing experience when you're like the star of a show that could go ahead. I'm wondering what's been the relationship there where, you've got this pilot, you're the star of the show that it doesn't happen. That's my biggest fear.
Oh, it's so funny because I always felt like it was shocking that I was as far as I was. Like, meaning that to get to get a to get a show to be shot is crazy.
Mm.
Like it's crazy to get a show shot. Considering how many people have shows that are worthy of being shot and go through all the proper channels to get it shot and don't get it shot, how many shows do get shot is a small number comparatively to the ones that are, that coulda, shoulda, woulda gotten shot. And these shows are now at the stage where we're gonna shoot them. And so I always felt like that was amazing in and of itself. So anytime somebody felt like, oh, it's not gonna go, I always kind of thought, yeah, well, most of them don't. Like, who cares? It didn't surprise me. I assumed my assumption was that it wasn't gonna go or it was gonna get canceled or like whatever. To do something like what Jesse Tyler Ferguson did, to go 10 years, that is another level that I just never really attached myself to. And I don't know why. That never struck me as disappointing, getting a show canceled or pilot not going, or which is good because as you pointed out, it happens a lot. So in fact, I read something one time and I don't know why or how. I don't see a lot of things that people write, but I did see this thing that somebody said something like, it called me like a show killer. Like, well, oh great, Andrew's on Modern Family. Does that mean it's going to get canceled?
I'm glad that you could laugh.
Hey? I was like,
Imagine having that power on a show like Modern Family where
yeah, right. I sank that ship.
oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
Does it bother you or you just laugh at
Well, I mean, there have been things that I've read that have bothered me, but they are also funny. And I don't mind being made fun of. In fact, I kind of like it. My great, amazing partner, put a roast together for me last year for my birthday and surprised me. And
that
it
is
was,
so okay.
oh my God, it was so amazing. One of them said, oh no, I better not say that actually. There was really bad, mean jokes that they made, but I loved it all. But it was really funny because they were calling Jason and they were going, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't be mean to her. And Jason kept going, I'm telling you, the meaner, the better. You cannot upset her. You can't do it. And it was true. We sat there for an hour and and I was in stitches. And a couple of my friends that were there said, I can't believe you can do that. I love to be made fun of. My only problem with being made fun of is if it's not a good enough joke to make fun of me. So somebody just made fun of me the other day, and I thought, you know what I'm most offended is that your joke sucked. Like, it wasn't funny. You made a joke at my expense and you shit the bed. You idiot.
Oh, okay. I love your sense of humor. And okay, a roast is the best if people can handle it. First of all, I love that you can laugh at yourself. I think that's so important. That's probably one of the attributes that have allowed you to keep on moving forward. But a roast, whose idea did you say it was? Was it yours or your partner's?
It was Jason's idea because he knew I love watching roasts. I'm always like, oh, there's a roast. Let's watch
Yeah,
the roast. Oh my God, they're the best.
all of them.
And I also love being made fun of. Like, I love it when people call me out on my stupid shit.
Did you get to participate in it?
Oh yeah, no, I didn't. I'm trying to think if I got any zingers out there. No, because it was a surprise, so I didn't know it was coming. So I was so taken off guard.
One could say that it's just your friends ripping and laying shit on you, but you're just like, this is the best birthday ever. Thanks, guys. I love you.
It was so great. Like and it was really funny too, because a couple of them had called me afterwards or texted afterwards and said, I was so scared. I was so scared to say that, and Jason kept saying, no, no, it's okay. You can say it.
Please, I need this. Go further. Go further. Give me some material.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
got good friends that they did it, and then they also checked in with you to just see that it was okay. It would have
Yeah,
been
yeah.
great if you lost all of your friends on the day. Just like, oh, best birthday ever. I want to do that, but I'm worried that my friends won't be able to handle it if I then do it. But another one of someone that I know, they did a roast birthday recently, and I thought it was the best idea ever.
It's
Oh,
so much fun. It's so much fun. But the other thing about it too, it's hard to write.
mm.
So when you ask somebody to do that for you, it's a big, so I was really feeling so special that all of those people had to figure out a way to, because a couple of them aren't performers, like one of my friend Michelle said this, which I thought was so funny. She said, and I don't know why Andrea and I are friends. We don't have anything in common other than the fact that we're both mothers. But even that, she goes, I'm the head of the PTA, and Andrea runs from a sign-up sheet. And I was like, Michelle. I was like,
I'm glad. You're a
she's
rare
not a
breed.
performer or anything. I was like, that was a really good joke.
I'm glad that you can look at it also through the lens of just like whether it's funny or not. Okay, there's something in it for you there. It's something to add it to the vision board, work on it. I like that encouragement. Um,
Yeah.
I love that. That's hilarious. I'm going to do that for my birthday, which is in a while. Um, what we're going to do now to wrap up the podcast is a quick rapid fire segment. So the
Okay.
first thing that springs to mind, but if you need time to think about it, then do not worry.
Put it together and make it look like I was quick thinking. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of edits of just moving around.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
oh, we quickly mentioned, I quickly mentioned this. I just love to know your thoughts on this. I think this is a wild concept, but it's very empowering. You mentioned elsewhere that you were aged out of the network game. I'd love to know what your thoughts are on that because that's a wild concept to me, especially at, I think you're 37.
Oh, at the time I was 37, you mean that yeah, I guess, and yeah, I felt like what I had mostly played up until that point was the the Sam and Diane, or the Ross and the Rachel of like, is he going to get the girl? Is he not going to get the girl? I was always the girl that like, are they going to get together? Are they not going to get together? Putting myself in quite a category with those two examples, by the way. But that's what I was getting in the pilots that all died. I was this girl that like was going to maybe, and around 37 you're sort of like, well, if you're going to if they're going to get together or not, I don't know, it just didn't seem like the right. Although I did start to move into, like you mentioned, How We Live. That one was a little bit different. I was playing, a mother of four at that point or something. It was like things did start to change. But when I moved into the streaming game and I got jobs like on Cruel Summer, where, there was sort of a mysterious element of, are you a bad person? Are you a good person? It was like things just got more interesting over there than they had been in the network game. But yeah, I guess I did feel that way. I felt like I had aged out of the game over there.
And in terms, so the thoughts of when then streaming came along, that sounds like a really interesting opportunity. Yeah, I don't have a question. It just sounds very
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah, 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 yeah. It was the wild. It's the wild, wild west. It was the new frontier. It was all new. Who knows what? Well, look, the writers are on strike because they're still figuring out how to handle this, because it's all such a different. It's a totally different game now, and I was part of that.
I'm glad that you got to experience that as well. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, okay, we've been alluding to this, but we'll see what comes out. What's been your special ingredient to work all these years?
Oh, I guess not quitting. I
I'm
think
not
that's
gonna
it.
I'm not gonna comment on them because I'll derail them. That was very cool. And you mentioned that, even though you're not a cliche, but you mentioned you're the stereotypical like cliche LA lady or actress, sorry. They are very big on like kind of like mental health and some really cool stuff that I've spoken to along the way. Is there anything in particular that you do to make you feel good?
I will say, and it's funny, I just gave this piece of advice to my sister, my mom, and my niece, is friends. I think friends are so important, and I love my friends, and I have really, really good friends, and they make all the difference. They change everything for me.
That's awesome. Oh, can't comment. Um, Best advice the psychic gave to you.
Oh, okay. This psychic said this to me. I told her that I was I was deliberately trying to be joyful, even though I wasn't feeling joyful. I was doing things that were like, I guess I didn't really want to do these things but I was forcing myself to like go for a hike or like what I was deliberately trying to do these things and what she said back to me was she said, yeah, but I'd rather see you do that than just fall into the sadness and let it consume you. She said, I know it maybe feels like you're trying too hard or pushing too hard to feel a certain way, but that is actually netting results for you. So the things that are like going well are because you're doing that. So keep doing that. And that stuck with me. I just was like, okay.
That's very cool.
She called out something that was going well that I didn't say and she didn't know. She was like, and she named something. She said, is this thing going well? And I went, yeah. She was, that's why.
Awesome. That's so great. And that's life
I
changing.
know somebody's gonna be listening to this and going, well, you don't have to be psychic to know that.
I
200
know.
bucks.
There's so many. I love when messages just hit us. And yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
What are you most proud of?
My daughter and my relationship with Jason.
Awesome. Any advice you want to give to people who want to try something different or new, but perhaps a bit fearful of doing so?
Yeah, I would say do it when you're first starting out and you're young, go for it because the older you get, the more comfort matters to you. And it's easier to be uncomfortable when you're young. So do it when you're young and you're willing to sleep in that hostel and you're willing to travel that way and do it then because that's where it'll take you to the places but if you wait, it gets harder to, you get more accustomed to better beds and stuff.
Uh, and last question before I ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you. What is the one question I should have asked you?
What is the one question you should have asked me? Gosh, I don't think that's you did great. This is one of the best interviews I've ever had. Seriously, you're fantastic.
I'm going to
And
send that to my parents.
I don't know if you are interested in engaged, but you seem like you are.
I'm very excited for this. Uh,
Makes it
uh,
so much easier. I've been interviewed before and I'm like, this guy does not give a shit. He's just doing his job. And I'm like, I don't know.
I was interviewed, just to put in context, not for an ego side. I was interviewed for our biggest newspaper a little while ago, and the guy for the podcast, and I was pretty excited about it. And the guy goes, I'm just gonna, because they changed the journalist last minute, he goes, just to let you know, I don't know anything about your podcast. But I will check it out, but I don't know anything about your podcast. I'm like, why are you interviewing me? Why are you here? I don't need to do this. Uh,
Oh my God. You're like, I'm right here. I can
yeah.
hear you.
And he just thought that was like a normal thing. I'm like, do you want to do it later? He goes, nah, I need it out. I'm like, okay.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
Anyway, anything you want to tie up? Anything that you want to bring up before we ask about your socials and all of that stuff?
No, I just want to tell you that I very recently got back into Instagram. So when you go and look at it, it doesn't look, I don't know what it looks like, but I just recently got back into it. So, and I'm nervous about it. And I have to ask everybody 10 times if they think it's okay. And, so
Looks
I'm not
great.
the right, I missed I'm not in the wrong generation. I'm trying. So if you go and you look at it, this is a 48-year-old woman going, I don't know, is that cool?
You
That's
should,
stupid.
yeah, I like it, but you should post like the best zingers that you've had it yourself as well and your reaction. So that'd be hilarious.
Oh, that's a good idea. Okay. Yeah, I do want something. I want something funny and I want something like that you could come back to. So that's actually maybe I'll try that.
Yeah, who
Maybe
knows?
I'll try to post all the bad things that got said about me.
And what's your Instagram handle so people can check it out?
It's called Andrea Anders Me because I'm a narcissist.
That'll be in the episode notes so people can check it out. Thank you. You are amazing. You're very inspiring and you are hilarious. I'm very excited to see your Instagram stuff as well. And yeah,
Well, tamper your excitement 'cause
awesome. Thank you.
yeah, really fun meeting you. You're fantastic. I had a really good time. Thank you for reaching out and thank you for interviewing me.
I love Andrea's take on fear and how she doesn't allow it to stop her from achieving her goals. She has a beautiful mindset that regardless of how scary the goal or idea may appear to be, she approaches everything through the viewpoint of joy. She has this wonderful ability to transmute negativity into positivity, which enables her to focus on her journey, which ultimately leads to a greater chance of success and happiness. Importantly, Andrea addresses that actors all want all the roles on offer, just as in life, where we want all the shiny items, but as she thoughtfully explains, not every role is right for everyone. Sometimes we aren't the best fit. It's just not meant to be. For example, we aren't a suitable match for everyone, not every food will resonate, and not all the books or movies will spark our interest, and that is okay. It's better than okay. It's great. We're all unique and we have different skill sets, interests, etc., and it's important to acknowledge and embrace our gifts. That doesn't mean we don't expand on our skill set. It just means embrace what we have right now. So I'll leave you with this epic quote. Don't let your fear of failure triumph over the joy of participating. Marilyn Monroe. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.